Okay, so as usual, I'll start talking. What you're about to see is a piece of my mind that is a result of theosophical thinking over the years. And I've been working in psychiatry for more than 30 plus years with individuals from age 3, 4, up through 80, 90 years old. So for me, the approach to treatment and care has changed and has evolved and has been more influenced by Theosophy than by the typical teachings. And so what you will probably see, if it ever lights up, is a picture of what I carry around with me all the time that is the framework and filter through which I look at people. And are we ready? Is it coming? It's not ready?
It's coming up. So
Okay. When you see this, there will be numbers reflective of these numbers on this image. The numbers are not there for linear progression because this picture is a reflection of a dynamic process that is always going on, that is always shifting, that is always changing, that is always transforming, depending upon who is in front of me, depending upon what they want, what they need, and where they are for that particular moment. So much of the way that I conceptualize things in terms of treatment has been reflected in some of the snippets you've already seen, because as a group, you've been able to put them together and you've seen them on the mind map. One of the things that you have probably recognized is that I ask a lot of questions, and some folks would probably say that's the Socratic method. One of the first questions that I ask anyone when they come into the office or when they're interacting with me in the hallway is, who are you? When they try to answer that question, I tell them we are already playing a game of chess. Be careful with your answer. And why do I do that? Because we're shifting ground. I like to play with the mind. If it's fun, then it's not work, then it's not effort to change. If we can laugh, if we can share, and sometimes cry together, that's a good thing. They don't want you to do that therapeutically because the boundaries may get blurred. But if you're working from a theosophical process, you know your boundaries, and so you're not so much worried about that. So when they finally find out, they can't answer the question who they are, because whatever they tell me, I'm demonstrating to them that's not what I want to know. And the answer that they gave me is insufficient. My next question then is, what is coming to therapy? And they want to tell me who is coming to therapy. And when they devolve to the idea of who, that is another chess game that we play. Because right away we're working with the idea of identity. And it's the identity that's attached to the issues. So if we can modify the sense of identity even without them knowing, the attachment to the issues are gradually becoming modified as well. And if, for instance, we have a situation where we're talking about depression and suicide, my question is, if you cannot tell me who you are, if you cannot share with me what you are, how can you share with me the idea that you want to kill what you don't know? What you can't find, because then my questions are also, where are you? And where is your mind? Is there a difference? And they're getting frustrated and they're getting mad, but because we can play and we can share, we can diffuse the anger. And then I can ask them to share with me or ask me questions. I tell them they can ask me anything in the world. Anything they want to know about me is okay, because then I'm sharing. And as we're sharing, we're eventually entering into TC, a relationship. And that relationship I think of as a chemical bond. It's like a molecule. We're sharing now energy in between us. And that sharing, without blurring boundaries, becomes important because in the sharing, there is an empathy, there is a resonance, and there is a taking on of what they are and what music they play. And so when I can establish the who and the what that don't exist, and we can generate flexibility and a little bit of play, where my mind is what is in front of me, which is way up at the top. And this is what you guys have already spoken about in terms of identifying the higher in the personal element. So where I am focused is here. And the Atma-Buddhic part of them is pretty much present, active, but dormant. If it were active, they would have the light within them and they would be able to transform the experience they had already, but they have not been able to do that. The next piece for me that becomes very important to try to share with them without using words and without labeling things that they can argue with is this ray. And this ray is the incarnating light. It is the light that is in connection with the spiritual ego. The spiritual ego, during that therapeutic process, I'm looking at as the reservoir of the collective being, life after life after life. As Madame Blavatsky says, it sends out a ray, and that ray becomes involved in matter. So what is the matter? That is part of the question for me inside. And also, what is the matter that dresses the ray on the outside? So this is essentially the diagram on page 200, I think, of the SD, where she gives you the 4 lower planes and the 3 higher planes. That is a model that is present in every interaction that we have, whether it's in therapy, whether it's person to person, whether it's going to the store. And so for myself, and this is just setting the groundwork, this is what's in my head even before we are engaging in a therapeutic process. My questions to myself about this light that's in front of me, not the person that's in front of me, because I've already confused them in terms of personality. What is it that they are versus who they think they are? Because who we think we are is not what we are. And I have to recognize that that ray becomes obscured. What does it become obscured with? As Madame Blavatsky says, there are 2 things. These samskaras, which are the imprints in the reincarnating egoic spiritual being, holds collectively the results of every life that we have lived, and the portion of that pool that this ray takes on at the time of incarnation for an individual life. So out of this entire pool, they may only be dressing up in 2% of their entire karmic inheritance. The karmic inheritance is simply what they've done life after life after life, what they've laid down, what they have in store for rewards when they become incarnated. I want to know that. I want to understand that. They can't explain that to me. But when we dance, we can share that without them even knowing it because it's beyond words. But that requires me as shrink, psychiatrist, to be in tune with them, which is why we dance, why we share empathy, why we share stories. And so if they're talking about the burden of depression, I'm sharing the experience of annihilation of the ego that I've been through. in terms of depression or whatever else it is. The knowledge of a living death, the knowledge of suffering and pain. Why? Because it's part of life. It's normal. It's okay. It's what we learn from. It's the meal that we have just eaten. And this is what I use to describe to them what life is. Life is breakfast, lunch, and dinner. You eat your breakfast. Do you get digestion, indigestion? Do you hate the food that you're eating? It doesn't matter, because hopefully, if it's not a candy bar, there's nutrition there. Same thing with the lunch, same thing with the dinner. The lunch may be a traumatic experience. You want to throw it up. You develop anorexia, and you're throwing up, but if you're not getting rid of the indigestion that you have embraced and embodied, you can never be free of the trauma. And so I explained to them, life, in metaphoric fashion, is a dinner. You eat it. You may not like it. Don't resist it. There is health there. There is nutrition there. There are positive things that are going to help you grow. And so I share with them, if I do what I am supposed to do correctly, you will thank me for having gone through the trauma. Because now you understand the trauma is not the trauma. Why? Because we have already begun to redefine life experience. As it was mentioned in some of the snippets, we do not experience reality. We live mainly in our head. We generate concepts. We think things are happening. We create the future before we've experienced the present. We are not living here and now. So when we are talking to each other, our minds are somewhere else, influencing what we say so that we cannot embrace what's happening here and now. I need to help them redirect their attention to the here and now. And if we are purposefully and fully here and now, we are not remembering the past. We are not anticipating with fear the future. And so if I can help them be here and extend the sense of awareness of now, and help them understand that if they meet each moment as it unfolds to them, they can deal with it. If we are constantly worried about what's coming, we can't deal with what's here. We get indigestion from everything that we've been through, and we go round and round and round. And so in thinking of some skandhas and recognizing that they dictate skandhas, and that the skandhas then dictate the astral form or the morphological field, whatever expression you want to use, and the tanhic elements themselves hold the energy, the force, and the power that drives those skandhas, and those skandhas then, thank you, they modify the DNA of your being. It's not your parents that are giving you a set of DNA. It's the egoic light that has clothed itself and descended to the point of the DNA, and its magnetic field organizes the DNA within the womb to express the form that is necessary. So for me, the question is, why did the ego modify the DNA in that way such that this form is here? And then we have to recognize the system. The baby is born. It's born into a family. The family is within a community. The community may be a positive one, may be a negative one. The community is within a state. The state has its laws. All of this is connected. The ego is now embedded in a nest of, or what I share with the clients, you are in a garden. And I have to ask them, what is the nature of your garden? Is the soil rich? Do you get water? Is the sun bright? All metaphorically, because they can understand and feel the poetry of the language. Forget about, let's talk about the trauma. That comes later. We have to prepare the field, we have to generate the trust, we have to establish the rapport, and they have to know that I feel what they can express. And I will share with them, this is what I'm thinking. And then I get the aha moment. Yeah, but that's what we were talking about before we came in. And I said, I guess we've got a connection, huh? And they like that because now they don't feel alone. So just in these few, and as I explained, I've got 20 minutes to work with clients. The first time I meet them, I've got an hour and 20 minutes to gather all of their life history, to establish rapport, to tell jokes, and to connect. And to convince them that there's a possibility that they can change. And that's okay, because Theosophy, year after year after year, does that. And that's why I'm saying this is not by number. Once we get to the point that we're here, we now talk about, well, what's happened to you since you've been born? And we look at the experiences that they share, we look at the parents that they've had. Were the parents domestically involved in violence? Were they subjected to unfortunate sexual abuse that they don't want to talk about? And I tell them, it's okay, we don't have to talk about it. If you acknowledge with a head shake, I can fill in the details. But it's okay. Always reassuring. Even when we walk in dark places, we walk together. And the darkness, the more we stay in it, becomes light. So again, all of these metaphors are being laid down and the seeds are being planted for the mindset that we have to work with in order to change. So if we're looking at the model that we were given to work with, we have now looked at the ego coming into incarnation, being born, having a series of experiences, and now walking into the office for help. We've gone from the universal to the individual and particular because as they're doing this and sharing, I'm doing this. When I'm feeling, I'm asking, and they have to confirm that what I'm feeling is what they have experienced. So we're establishing a dialogue, and that dialogue is becoming intimate. There's a danger there, but the danger is okay if you're okay. Because then again, in this dance, we are sharing energy. We are sharing consciousness. We are sharing awareness. And it's nothing that, as a doctor, I'm intending to do. I just want to be present. And I want them to feel the fact that I am present. I want them to understand that I am not afraid of anything that they are going to share with me. I want them to know that I'm okay walking through hell with them. It's okay. I've got my own hell. I understand it. I accept it. And I'm going to help you accept yours. Because when you accept it, you can transform it. So at the same time that we're doing this, we're realizing that there's a person with a cognitive set of thoughts, ideas, biases, beliefs that obscure the light. We have now had experiences that impact how we feel, our emotions, our desires, which ones are up, which ones are down, what makes us hate, what makes us love, what makes us not trust. And so we are touching emotionally. I am looking at how the cognition and the emotion are constantly feeding the astral. As HPB tells us, when we are born, the astral is the model for the body, but as we experience life, the body begins to modify the astral. I want to be aware of those changes, of those modifications that are occurring emotionally, cognitively, existentially. The existential part is my life has no meaning. And so part of the way of addressing that, especially when the kids come in that want to commit suicide that are 10 years old, because I get some children in, they're geniuses, 9 years old, 8 years old. They already know what depression is. They know what hell is. They don't want to do therapy because they are too smart. they're smarter than the therapist. And when I'm talking to them, they will tell me, therapist is dumb. They can't do anything for me. They talk to me about how I feel. What do they know about how I feel? And so now we can play. Because what I do is, without labeling, I ask them theosophical questions. They can't answer those. Once in a while, I will get a 10-year-old that will tell me, my brain made me do it, but my soul is in charge, and I didn't even ask. And then I tell them, we can have a real conversation. And their parents are standing there, and I say, it's an old soul, don't worry about it, we'll figure it out. Because they're lost. And yet we're playing the game. And then I will test them because they are very, very smart. But I have to test them in order to show that they don't know the answers, because that further disarms them. And if it further disarms them, they have to say, well, you asked me these questions, do you have the answer? I said, yes, I have the answers, but I want to help you figure them out. And so now again, we are tighter. We can play. It is now a game to come into the doctor's office as opposed to a hated act. From that point, we can now begin to move upward. Now, as we're beginning to move upward, there are 3 or 4 grids that I use that are also constantly in my mind. You all are familiar with the 49 fires, 7 principles, the Atmic of the Atmic, the Atmic of the Buddhic, blah, 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 the Buddhic of the monastic, the Buddhic of the common monastic, blah, 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 blah. So we've got 49 squares where a person can be. We also have sattva, rajas, and tamas, and we know that every life atom, as HPB tells us in Psychic and Noetic Action, can resonate in one of those fields. It has the capacity for all of those. And if we really want to break it down and fit it on the grid, then sattva is Atma Buddhi, rajas is higher manas, lower manas, general manas, and tamas is the 4 lower qualities. So now we can really, really focus in on what nature of the being is present, what's up on the horizon if we think of it astrologically, what is in opposition to that, what is being eclipsed, what has been submerged, and now we can begin to play. We play with the words, or, unfortunately, we play with the emotions. Playing with the emotions are more risky than playing with the words, because the emotions go deeper into the feelings and the astral, which then is involving the energy levels. And so if you're thinking about energy healing or chakra healing or the psychic aspect of the being, those are different tools and formats whereby you structure your interactions with the being depending on where they are. When I understand sattva, rajasic, tamas, when I understand where they are, if they're stuck in tamas, deep dark depression, so they're in the lowest field of the principles, in the darkest space, physical, they're in hell. How do I move them from physical to atmic? And metaphorically, that movement may simply be in terms of this: I have a problem, we're dealing with the problem, we've solved the problem. My mind is, we've become obstructed, the ray, the real being that is incarnating, has become obstructed by its karma. It is wearing, as it says in the Pistis Sophia, the karmic cloak of destiny. If these skandhas and energies are very strong and very tight, there is no light that comes through. If there is no light that comes through, they live in darkness. If they're living in darkness and the rajasic element is spinning around, my other grid is the grid of Yakaburma. Yakaburma talks about the 7 properties of nature. And HPB validates those 7 properties as aspects of the 7 principles. He talks about the first one, which is analogous to gravity and pulls things in, makes it hard, cold, and obstructive, very, very physical. He talks about the second one that he labels bitterness, which is a pulsation, an attraction, and a repulsion. And the way I visualize that is the bar of a magnet, positive, negative, the positives push, the negatives push, the positive and negative attract. The pulsation, which is also the breath of life, because it cannot escape, begins to turn in a circle. If the gravity is strong, the circle becomes so intense that the back and forth movements create friction, heat, and fire. The fire is the comic principle of our nature that either destroys us because it's burning so fiercely. And so when you've got someone on that grid in the darkness of the darkness, with the Rajasic principle creating the fire, that is suicide. They can't handle that. They're not going to live. And there are clients that walk in the office that will tell you, I'm going to kill myself. And so before they tell me that, I ask them, I've got a gun. Here it is. It's loaded. 5 bullets are in it. Would you take this gun, put it to your head, and kill yourself right now if I gave it to you? And they look at me like I'm crazy. And I say, work with me, because I'm not waiting for them to tell me about suicide. I am pushing the envelope. But I'm comfortable pushing the envelope, because now they have to really think, are they willing to kill themselves? And there are some that simply say, yeah. And I say, well, then what plans do you have for next month? Your mother's having a birthday. If they've got no plans, it's a done deal. They've got to go to the hospital. If they've got plans, then I know they want me to feel for them. They want me to understand they're in pain, but they don't want to die, not yet. And so my second question is, what would make you kill yourself? I'd like to know, I'd need to know. And then my third question is, if you're telling me you won't kill yourself, why not? What do you have to live for? Who are you that you should be alive? And this really disorients their thinking. But when it disorients their thinking, it opens up that darkness. And it changes the mindset. And a little point of light comes through, and we can grab that light. And I tell them, oh, you hesitated. So if you're hesitating, then you're really, really not sure. So how can I help you take that uncertainty and make it certain that you're not going to do this? Let's play. Not work. Let's play. I've got you. I'm with you. Please understand that. And then, as we begin to go back up, I can hopefully begin to transform that Rajasic burning fire into Sattvic light, a gentle, mild, burning sun. And in Yaka Burma's term, that is the sound that becomes harmonious, which gives rise to a light that is peaceful. We talk about the Buddhic light. And so now we can have moments of that, up and down, up and down. While we're having moments of that, we're already changing thoughts. We're changing reflection. We're changing feelings. We're confronting emotions. Yet feelings are really, really, really deep. And sometimes there are no words for what people feel, so then we use other entries. Whether it's, do you like the dance? What dance do you like? What expresses the way you feel best? Do you like poetry? What kind of music do you listen to? It's dark, it's classical, or whatever. All of that is information. It's information about where their principles are. It's information about how much light is coming through, how much light is not coming through, and what we have to do in order to remove the obscurations in order to let the light come through. Because the light then becomes the metaphor for the sun that nourishes the seeds that allow the plant to grow to bear the fruit. And these are the metaphors that we're using. Now, there are times that we have to talk about medicines, because sometimes it's so dark and so tight that the medicines may open it up to the point that we can engage. So if we're talking about someone, for instance, worst case scenario with schizophrenia, they can't have a conversation. They have no ability to make proper judgment. Then we have to do something to slow down the rajasic whirling and the darkness in their mind that is affecting cognition as well as emotion and the way their bodies feel. And so we have to take an inventory of that and then begin to systematically address each one, looking at the medications, looking at the family support system, looking at the environment that they're in, looking at the skills that they have, looking at the defenses that they're using, and also looking at the level of development that they are. I cannot talk to a 4-year-old the same way that I talk to a 21-year-old. Their cognitive awareness, their emotional state of development, their needs are all different. So when I am working with individuals, I am working minute by minute, moment by moment, assessing where are we, what are we talking about, how are we dancing, what do we need. That's just in the therapeutic one-to-one. The emotions then can be, the medications can then do something else, because this is all 20 minutes. I've got 20 minutes to reach this in order to make a difference and awaken a degree of hope. And whether we're talking about anger, whether we're talking about hatred, whether we're talking about depression, whether we're talking about anxiety, all of it fits in here. All of it is understandable. And when I can help them understand that and help them understand that the way they think about things is not the way things are. And one of the simplest analogies I use is the event of 9/11. And I just asked them, was 9/11 a good day or a bad day? And obviously most say it was a bad day. And then my question is, for who? Because for Osama bin Laden, it was a great day. For the people in Iran that hated the Americans, it was a great day. For the people that had been abused every day by someone that worked in that building who died that day, they were now free, and it was a good day. For the people that lost someone they loved in that building that day, it was a bad day. So the important point to convince them of is that the event has no good or bad designation. We bring to the event the judgment of good and bad. What we should be doing is understanding the event. 2 planes hit 2 buildings, 3,000 people died. Do we want that to happen again? No. What do we have to do? What do we have to do? You have the power to do. That is freeing up the will, the volition, and the light that has been obscured. It's mobilizing the energies of the depressive person that doesn't want to get out of the bed. What do we have to do to help you change the situation? Not what do you have to do, what do we have to do? So for me, I am taking responsibility for them, and I thank them for allowing me to dance with their soul. And they really don't always understand that, because they're trusting me with something very sacred. And I need them to understand that, because although they look at me like I'm crazy, in time it becomes a topic of discussion. That I could value something in them so much. And so often the talks become Theosophy in therapeutic form, which then further transforms. And the little things, for instance, that I wear, they always ask, has a theosophical symbolic interpretation, a spiritual interpretation that I share with them, which then opens up another window in them that this crazy person behind the desk that I like talking to sees things from a different point of view. And then they can begin to believe that there is another window on reality. And if they're young, they sometimes ask for books to read, which opens up the window even more. While their parents are there, when the kids walk out the office, they say, "Where did you get this?" I say, "Well, you can pick up this, that." Because now we're then changing the family, because I usually don't want kids in my office without their parents. I want the parents to know everything I'm doing, how confused they get, how pissed off they get, so that they can understand what that process is. And they can also understand what responsibility they have, because I also hold them responsible for the way that they have been training their child. Not in a bad way, because some of them just don't know, they don't understand. But when you can help them share pieces of this, then they have also a different worldview, and then they share with you, "Well, you know, I believe in karma." And I say, "Yeah, well, what is karma?" And then we have another discussion that we can then clarify, and then I can help them understand that the dance they've got with their kid is karmic. Now they've got a responsibility to dance karmically correct instead of yelling, screaming, slapping, hitting, and putting out in the street. And so one thing leads to another, and we're looking at a system change. And it's a beautiful thing. And again, I thank them for helping me understand Theosophy in 1,000 different ways, 1,000 different applications. So that's just a snippet of what I do on a day-to-day basis with 30 people during the daytime. Maybe 2 minutes if there are any questions.
Yeah, I'm kind of surprised to hear that you have the parents in on most or all of these colloquies with the young people.
I don't believe in the laws. I tell the parents I don't believe in HIPAA. HIPAA is a law that says children over 14 have the right to be in therapy, and their parents have no right to know anything that they're talking about. And I tell them, if you don't sign a consent of release that I can talk to your parent, you can't be here. 14 years old has no sense. The brain, from the research point of view, has not even matured at 14. Doesn't mature till mid-20s. How can I give a 14-year-old responsibility? Can't do that.
But is the child at all concerned to open up in front of his parents and share his feelings?
Yes, they are, but I tell them point blank, look, if something happens to you and you go to the hospital, who are they going to call? Your parents. If something happens to you and somebody sticks a knife in you, who are they going to call? Your parents. Are your parents going to then know what you were doing? Yeah. Are they going to like it? No, of course not. You were sneaking. But who's got to save your behind? Your parents. When you want money, who do you ask? Your parents. And if you're using the money for the drugs, who finds out? Your parents. Because when the cops arrest you for buying the drugs, who are they calling? Your parents. And so I tell them, if your parents are going to know anyway, and if they are ultimately responsible for all the stupid mistakes you make, and I use those words because kids understand words like poop, pee, greed, stupidity. I've got to talk their language. And I love the poop jokes because they get it. And it opens them up and they laugh, and it's a good time. But they finally realize it's not that I want the parents to be in their business, but the parents are responsible for them. And if, and I share with them this, if they do something really wrong and they get arrested because they've hurt someone else, like the shooters, they're going to ask the parents, how come you didn't know? That's not acceptable. The parents have to know. And I tell the kids, the parents should be up your bottom, in your business. That's the way I talk to them. Because at the end of the day, they're responsible for you. So if you don't want to sign the consent, you can go. I need the parents there.
Yeah.
And so sometimes they will look at me and ask, can moms go? I said, yes, but you have to understand when she comes back in, we're going to talk about what you shared. I will explain it, but if it's that important, she's got to know. So I need the parents there, especially sometimes for the young ladies. I don't want anyone saying anything. Okay, so that's my protection. You were there, you were the witness, we had fun, so it serves multiple levels of purpose. And that's the way, for me, it should be.
Mike, yeah. So you told that sometimes when they're into it, you talk about Theosophy?
Yeah, yes.
So
I don't use always the terms unless they ask.
Mm-hmm.
But we talk the ideas. And they're amazed. And that's good.
And were some of them even going further in that? Went further?
Some of them do, and I will bring them a book and say, here, read this. The Ocean or something like that. Something light. Or give it to their parents and say, look it over. And if you have any questions, feel free to ask. I love to talk. And they do. And sometimes we get the medical students doing the rotations or the interns. And when they see what I do, they want to know how I do what I do. And then I tell them what I do is Theosophy. And I share with them some of the understanding of these elements of cognitive distortions, etc., to get to the real underlying element that is carrying the responsibility for a lifetime. And a lot of them say, I was looking for meaning. And even though they want to be a surgeon or a doctor, they like the ideas. So it's planting a seed. And then sometimes when I'm in the office between clients, we're talking about this, and they love it. So the whole environment, for the most part, is crazy, fun, and theosophic without talking Theosophy as a title unless it's asked. And that's a wonderful day. That's it? Oh.
Well, a question about point 7, the second last.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
You have different types.
Yes.
And could you explain these different types?
The types are more consistent with the principles that are active, that are rising, that are submerging. Again, there are the existential concerns. Why am I here? What is my purpose? Who am I? I don't have any meaning. And so there's nothing typically wrong, but that is causing a depression because they're searching. So I'm not going to talk to them about emotional disturbance. I'm going to talk to them about what is your idea of meaning? What is your idea of purpose? How do you define those things so that we can better clarify what it is you're really looking for? If they are caught up in a lot of negative ideation and they're feeling depressed, as an example, number one, I have to show them that you can think negative 24/7, but you don't have to be depressed. But also, if you're thinking negative and it's obstructing what you want to do, then the negativity has no value. You have to live a life of value. If what you do has no value, it's like spending $1 million for a piece of bubble gum. Would you do that? Obviously, they tell me no. So then I tell them, you cannot afford negative thoughts that have no value. How can we work with that? Because now they've got the idea, they can see the negativity, and it's a matter of how do we change that? How do we change the tamasic element of the negativity into a positive sattvic element of clear awareness that negative things happen, but I don't have to identify with them. I can be aware of them, and in the awareness of them, I can modify the environment such that they don't have the impact on me that they would, or I can modify my internal environment so that when I meet them, I can modify them. And I explain to people, and I tell them this is going to sound crazy, but stay with me. There is no reality. You determine what is valuable. You determine what is good or bad. You determine what is meaningful for you. Human beings mean food to the tiger. Human beings mean a murder object to the person that is a serial killer. To a priest, human beings mean something else. To a theosophist, human beings mean something else. So understanding the meaning, understanding the purpose, looking at the cognitions of the negative thoughts so that we can modify them, again, bring out their sattvic value, and once the sattvic value is there, it's easy to transition to the next level of thinking, which is about clear thinking. And one of the examples that I always share with them comes from Patanjali Yoga aphorisms in regards to meditation. And it's simply the conjunction of the idea with the word, with the object. These are three different things. The sound means something different, the object is something different, and the image and ideation about object and sound is something different. When we are meditating distinctly, we understand the nature of the sound. And that's why when we talk with each other, we feel where each other is coming from, at least in the office. When we understand the imaging power, we can then understand how the vibration creates an image that they then believe is a reality that is not a reality. And so when we can separate the event or the object, two planes hitting the building, from the cognition and the emotion and the ideation, we can then work with it objectively more appropriate. We can mourn for those that were hurt. We can say, I'm experiencing anger towards those that have done this. But since I understand that this is the victim because of this, I don't want to kill them. I want to help them. I want to help them become less obscured. And yeah, it's going to take time, but it's an easy process. Emotionally, it's the same thing. Physiologically, when we have pain, it impacts our mind, and so we get depressed. That's where then we're working. We're working from a physical perspective. So those types are simply the doorways of approach for where they are and what they need at a particular time. And sometimes it's a combination of all of them. As a soul looking in, you must be clear about what you're seeing, about what you're working with. As the alchemists say, in the beginning is the chaos. We must settle the chaos and separate out the elements. When we can do that, we can see clearly where they are, emotional, existential, instinctual, biochemical, neurotransmitter in the brain or whatever, and we know where we have to go, we know what work we have to do. And we have to be open, which is why I say this is not static, because once we triggered something, it triggers something else. And we have to be flexible to see that, to float with it, to change, to make a joke out of it, to challenge it, and to allow the light to shine a little bit brighter on this upward stage. So this upward stage is the evolutionary journey. It's the way we wake up in the morning. It's how we seed our night. It's what we're doing when we're growing and developing. It's a lot of things. And so for me, I'm looking at how can I help the light return to its source. And in that process, although we talk about personality, it's how do we gently disconnect the focus of energy identifying itself as person in a more general way, just the same way that a mother loves all of her children and will do anything at any time for all of her children before she does it for herself. Because when we can get there, they are no longer preoccupied with self. And then, as you guys said, in some of the interventions, you can redirect them towards service, you can redirect them towards helping others, and they're not focused on themselves. It's not about them. It's not about self-care. It's about other care. So again, that process is very flexible, always ongoing, and a lot of work, but a wonderful thing. I'm sorry. Okay, I'll be right back.
Okay.
Yes, Dave.
Gene, I wonder if you could give us a little insight in to what barometer, so to speak, you use when you feel you need to turn to medicines,
Okay.
with your patients. Yeah.
I look into the toolbox all the time. My toolbox is meds, meditation, simple relaxation, stress reduction. It's ECT sometimes. It's magnetic stimulation. It's change of environment. So, depending upon how deeply embedded they are in the biochemical, physiological body, belief system, cognitions, because even though each of these are their own plane, the physical, the astral, the pranic emotional, the kama manasic, going up into the incarnating ray, they can all be condensed into one plane acting in one manner. So all of these, even though they exist as entities, can be activating different aspects of this. And so if I see that with the jokes, with the laughter, with the challenges, there is no movement. And if I see that the darkness is increasing, we talk meds. I set the pace in the beginning because I usually suggest to them that we don't want to jump out the wagon with medications. You're in therapy. Let's give it 8 weeks. Unless you feel like you're really overwhelmed, come back anytime. But let's give it 8 weeks. And if in 8 weeks you're no better, then you're going to ask me for meds. And when you ask me for meds, then I know you're committed. Right now, I don't know you're committed. And if I don't know you're committed, I'm not giving you something you're not going to use because I can't force you to take it. So depending on where they are in this matrix, that's going to determine what I'm going to recommend at a particular time. And then I also let them know that 6 months, 7 months down the line, we can try to reduce that. If the symptoms come back, it's not working, you gotta have it. So at least then we're all in the same boat, we're all on the same plane, and we're all doing the same work.
Gene, not that you're doing this work for this reason, but do any of your clients do you ever get a sense of gratitude from them? Not that that's what it's for, but...
Their laughter is their gratitude. So when we can laugh when they're walking out the door, make a joke about coming back the next time, I'm good. Yeah. Okay?
Okay, thanks
All
a
right.
lot.